Back. Chris Nordstrom here, Brett Boyer here, Eric Moose.
Is online.
I'm here in Zoom.
Eric, Frank O'Connell here, Joan Genter
Here.
and myself. I'm here, right? Kept going through the numbers, thinking, who's the missing person? So, then, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And you think we hear. I had just an opening remark or two. I would just note, as brought to my attention by Jonathan from the county, that applications or opportunities to apply to be on the airport advisory board are opening up, and that they're due by the last Friday in October, which I gather is October 27th, by no later than 5 p.m. that day, October 27th. That's the application deadline. There's a couple positions up. There's 3 regular positions expiring, 2 alternate positions expiring, just the term expiring. And you know, it's up to the BOCC to make the selection, and they may choose to just carry over people those people that are already serving, whose terms are expiring, or select new people to sit on it. So just encourage anyone who's interested to apply. Again, the deadline is the last Friday in October, so October 27th by 5 p.m. deadline. Moving on to agenda item number 4. Calls for conflicts of interest. Does anybody have a conflict of interest to declare with respect to anything on the agenda this evening? I see nobody raising their hands, so we have no conflicts. I would move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5. Any changes to the agenda that anyone wishes to propose? I'm seeing no proposed changes from our board members. Item number 6 is approved minutes from our previous meeting. This would be our meeting of August 9th, 2023. Does anybody have any changes? I trust you've all had an opportunity to review them, but does anybody have any changes to propose?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
A second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody say no? All right, the ayes have it. That carries. Then item 7 on the agenda is staff reports and updates. This is just noted for a discussion, not action. So under that, we have updates from the airport director and company, so to speak. And I would invite Gasson. We have a couple items there listed about the kind of an update on how the FAA meeting of late, just things like that, and the AWOS, some gate access, runway 64 rehab.
No.
So if you could just take it, we would appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm actually going to start with our engineering update. So
Okay.
let's update on our current projects, and then I'll dovetail into that once the is finished.
Sure.
Corey Sigford with Ardura, and I will just go through, like I've been doing in the past, updates that have changed since the last meeting. So the electrical improvement project, we're redoing the regulators. Our contractor Colvico has completed the demolition of the old regulator building, moved all the regulators over to the new building, took down the beacon, the old beacon location, and installed a new beacon. We've done another construction time pause to wait for the generator that has still, it's also been pushed back into late September. So we're hoping at the next meeting we will have a generator in there and the project will be closed. Moving on down, the next ongoing project is the snow removal equipment building. You can kind of see it out there on the prairie. It's looking really good. The TML Construction is the prime contractor on that. They finished the shell mainly and the installation on the building. They're working this next month on installing the slab and driveways to the doors and Some things that have changed with that building over the past month. Coogee County and TML agreed to a supplemental agreement to install a restroom inside that building was last month. Next ongoing project is the runway rehab and taxiway B3 construction. They started construction on August 21st, full asphalt did. The runway was shut down on September 7th. The work that they've done so far, that was pretty much complete it's pretty much an ongoing project, but the things that have been completed are they've got the base course constructed on taxiway Bravo 3, which is midway in between on the north side towards the east. And taxiway N has been closed since August 21st, and we're hoping that it will be open on the 18th of September. And you'll note that the runway basically is being road milled right now, and it'll start being paved back. We're thinking on Friday. So the pavement maintenance project, the existing taxiway N project is a seal coat. Our contractor RPI started work on, well, this is outside of August, but started work on September 5th. And we're hoping that they will be done on the 18th. So the seal coat goes down. They're cleaning the pavement tomorrow. They did a crack sealing today, and on Friday they will start with the seal coat test strip, seal the rest of it, and then paint Saturday and Sunday for an opening on Monday. Let's see here, what's next. So Taxiway Charlie, which is the west end of Foxtrot, Ardura has started design on that. We had the geotechnical engineers out on site on Monday, Tuesday of this week. We are under contract and working to get a 30% design submittal towards the end of this week to the FAA and for review with the airport. Our ongoing environmental assessment discussion, Ardura has submitted a scope and fee to the airport for just the CADX on the property acquisition of 152 acres north of the airport in between Ramsey and Atlas. A more simplified environmental process than the full EA, and the air traffic control tower and commercial service have been tabled to date. And then other ongoing tasks, Gaston and the airport have asked us to do a geotech review of taxiway D1. That proposal has been submitted to the airport, and then also has asked us to do air traffic control tower grant, or not really grant application. So application to have an air traffic control tower, assistance with writing that application. And that's been submitted, and hopefully we'll be able to start work on that over the next month.
Any questions from the board?
Thanks, Corey.
So just for context, CADX means that basically no EIS will need to be prepared.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Means that we categorically excluded.
Gaston, do you have something
Absolutely.
next to the lineup?
Absolutely. So roughly 2 weeks ago, the FAA conducted a land use compliance audit, sort of pre-audit. Basically, each region does 2 airports a year at random. Coeur d'Alene was selected at that, and also partially in part to the Part 13 that's filed on the Gun Club. So those are kind of the 2 factors that had them choose Coeur d'Alene. They were here for roughly 2 days. We had the compliance team out of Seattle and a planning team out of Helena. So we got kind of the best of both worlds. It's been a while since they've been out to the airport, which was nice. So they can actually see how we're running out of development space. They're seeing the traffic levels, seeing our current projects. So it was a really good, well spent 2 days. As far as the inspection itself, we did very well on it. There's a lot of clear path forward with the gun club issue and other anonymous complaint issues. I can expand on those in about a month. They're gonna actually have a report to us roughly 30 to 60 days. So once we get that, I'll present that to the board, and get you guys all a copy of the actual findings of that. But they're very excited to be working with us, and we're working with the state of Idaho to purchase the gun club so they can continue to function there essentially, and also have a section of the property be used for aviation development. That was pretty important to the FAA. On that open property over there, there's essentially 3 20-acre parcels. So 40 of that would be going to the gun club, and then the airport would retain 20 acres for hangar development for GA hangars. So we would essentially punch a taxiway near the transector ramp over to that cul-de-sac airport drive and be able to open that up to roughly 40 to 60 more hangars over there. So they were, that was pretty high on their list. That would be a must have before they would close the part 13 on that. But everything else as far as land use, you know, the compliance office is the one that looks at hangars and how we're utilizing hangars. They had asked about hangar inspections, when was the last time they were conducted? I can't know, it was, you know, pre-COVID. So they were wanting us to get back on that. As far as the way I'll be conducting them, it's going to be very, very simple. Or the way it's been done in the past. Essentially, if there's any sort of aviation activities going on in the hangar, the aircraft can have easy ingress, egress. We're good. The office is aware that people store things in the hangars up here, motorhomes, boats, everything else. So they know that's a realistic factor of having a hangar. They're okay with that as long as the primary use is aviation. So there were a lot of hangars actually open the day they were here, and everything they looked at looks fine. So just drive by, they're like, you guys are in good shape. Having the planning office here during the tower was, our temporary tower was in operation. It was a fairly busy day, so they got to see some busy traffic here. They kind of had their eyes open quite a bit when they actually saw the type of traffic that was here. So that'll help us down the road when it comes to doing a tower study. And essentially the document that Corey's talking about preparing is not necessarily, it's not the application to get the tower, it's the application to get entered into the air traffic control system. So it's pretty much the first step in the 5-year process to talk about a tower. Before they'll even do a siting study, any cost benefit analysis, anything like that, we have to be accepted into the system first, as they're being, we have to justify a partial need essentially with that. So they're going to help us prepare that document and start that process. That can go many different ways. That can lead to a federally funded tower, a federally funded contract tower. They can build a tower and we staff it. They could build it and staff it. We could build it in-house. There could be private funding that builds a tower, but any one of those routes, we still have to be entered into the system and start that study process essentially. So that's what that would start. But circling back to the compliance, everything went very well. They're very happy with the airport. They were happy. They audited a few leases. That's not a big compliance thing they went through, but they picked a few leases at random. He goes through them. Peter Doyle is the compliance director out of Seattle. That's who is doing the main audit. And he was very happy with what he saw in our leases and our minimum standards. He talked very highly of the minimum standards. He realizes that's a very fluid document, and we definitely adjust and modify it, but he did like what he saw there. But other than that, there'll be definitely more to come once we actually get their report, their findings, and how to handle different issues and stuff on the airport. So I'll present that to you guys once we get that back. AWOS, we're actually moving forward pretty well with that. We actually are scheduled, approved to have the technician come out and actually put his hands on the AWOS and reinstall the microphone, whatever hardware might be needed to be augmented again. So that should be happening before the end of this week. The technician will come out and reinstall everything, and we should be good to go. From there, I will send at least our duty managers, possibly the ops staff, to again to be certified weather observers. Essentially, they have to take a test for the BTAR that they'll be good to go. You do have to hold that certification to do any augmentation, but for the most part, it's laid out exactly how the FAA said back east, that to just do the ticket, you guys should be augmented. There's no reason that should have been removed, and we'll get that back up and running for you guys. So that'll be pretty exciting for the winter time. Gate access. Like I said, at the last meeting, the Cessna gate is up and running with new keypads. Begin issuing codes to the Cessna tenants next week, and the rest of the keypads for all the other user access gates have arrived, and we are starting installing those next week as well. So we'll probably start with the heavy traffic gates like Skyhawk and Miles and some other gates, just kind of branch out from there. But as we get the gates up and running, we'll have everyone come in and get assigned PIN code to have in addition to their cards, use that for access, if you don't have your card with you, essentially. So. Last thing I had was just a debrief on the air traffic control tower, the seasonal tower, and those guys have been packed up in the lab. They definitely had their eyes open with Coeur d'Alene. In total, we got some stats that they went through 10 controllers in their staff that did not hack it essentially at Coeur d'Alene Airport. Yeah, they couldn't handle the complexity of the runway configuration, the taxiways, the amount of traffic, the diverse traffic. A lot of them thought they were going to show up to a fire tower that was at some airport in the middle of nowhere, and it not really work. So there was only a few guys that could actually make it, and out of those guys, they had 4 of them. 3 of them had worked full careers with the FAA, had worked the Oshkosh Tower, and they said Coeur d'Alene Airport is the second busiest tower to Oshkosh they've ever worked. So that really tells you how busy we are here. In one day, they did 30 IFR departures, 80 IFR departures in one day, which basically wouldn't be capable of doing that if they were not towered, because ATC won't lock out the airport until that aircraft that they cleared over the phone or at the end of the runway is clear the airspace. So they did have multiple pilot deviations, and one day I think they did 9 violations, pretty close to the end. So they want to try and reduce those just by education. One thing they offered for next year is to come out and possibly give a presentation, have a public meeting like a month before the tower even shows up. They would send their operations staff up and have a presentation, possibly an advisory board where they have their ideas, we can bounce ideas off them, maybe talk about arrival and departure routes, pretty much streamline the traffic a little bit better. If they showed up with not much information and like, where do you like to keep people? Is there areas you don't want noise over or anything like that? So we can talk about that pretty much as a community well before they actually show up and turn on the switch from the tower. So that would be pretty beneficial. But yeah, other than that, everything was going pretty well.
But student season 2.
Yes, as far as we've been having talks about possibly cost sharing with the Forest Service to expand the season that they're actually here. Because the Forest Service won't have them start up until they really get into the fire season, which this year was well after the 4th of July, and we're about a month and a half into really busy traffic up here. So the goal would be to have the tower started at least by May 1st, actually have it operational and have them setting up just before May. So, and then operating, well into October, until the end of October. So if everything goes right, we're gonna look at doing some cost share with the Forest Service to pick up the months on the outside of their fire season, so be able to have them up here for that whole term.
Where did they actually operate? Did they bring some kind of a portable tower?
Yeah, it's basically like a 30-foot Federal Light like race trailer. It's a full living portion trailer, but on the back of it, it has this cab that goes up the 2nd story. You go up these stairs and it has a full 360 cab that they just up by our North Ramsey gate up there on a big pad that we had built for them. So it was pretty nice days for the week.
And when the FAA was here, did they comment at all about the runway 6, runway 2 convergence at the north end, that problem?
They did. Basically, where it stands right now is it's been moved down the line with our ACIP schedule. They don't have funding for it immediately. It would be next on their list after we finish taxiway Charlie next year. But as we move into a master plan update next year, these are all things that we're gonna talk about. They know that. So we're kind of in this pivotal time where we can take a look at our ALP, take a look at our layout, and really sit down and make sure that that's the right decision, how we can make it happen, what might change. So they're excited for us to move into that master plan update, because a lot of things have changed here since the last one was written. So.
Question, on the 320-acre parcels, do they go all the way to Ramsey? Those pieces?
Yes, they open their driver ramp.
Other question, who is demolishing the old Humane Society? Is it? Or it looks like they're taking pieces off.
It is the Humane Society itself. I believe they have hired an outside contractor, I think Young, is actually doing the demo work on it now. But
Yes, is there gonna be any opportunity to reduce the footprint that the club has out there? So that the airport can have more than 20 acres available for hangar development?
that's something we're gonna look at, in conjunction with the gun club. They have to have a certain shot fall, radius that's like their safe area. And we're gonna go in and build, what we would like to do is go in and actually build an earth berm around, like a C-shaped earth berm around the actual flood itself. Hydro seed that in, it would kind of help as a protective barrier, a sound barrier for the, even the neighboring community around there. It would help direct some of that sound up rather than projecting it out. And the FAA is going to want to see that as far as a earth barrier between that and aircraft use hangars. On that 20 acres, if they're policing the ammunition they use properly, they should never reach that. I mean, you should be, well clear out in that area, but always taking the safest route, obviously. But yes, as far as the boundaries, we essentially want to give them just enough to be inside their shot fall, but then maximize the area that we can use for development.
I might suggest just early on, since it's so, when you're looking at that, it's so close to homes in that area, if you're going all the way to Ramsey, that we meet with our planning department early, so there can be any, any interaction that might help.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely.
Yes, one of the issues was environmental mitigation on that property because of all the residue from the clay pigeons. Is that a factor in the 20 acres that's set aside for the hangars?
Not on that 20 acres. That contamination hasn't reached out that far. So
They sampled that already? In those
that's
areas?
what we're working on right now. It's the type of assessment. Essentially, every 5 years they've historically mined that property. So they will actually go out and strip the property down about 12 inches and use a trowel and mine the lead out of it to reuse it. So that's one of the miscommunications that was happening with the state early on, was that it's been, 50, 60 years of lead buildup. And really, it's been recovered every 5 years. And the clay pigeons get cleaned out every 5 years, fall off as well. So I guess the last time it was mined was roughly 2019-ish, right in there. And so we're coming up due for the next mining on that. So that'll definitely help with local contamination levels out there.
Anything else in the update?
No, that's all I've got.
So I have a question. Did you actually keep the contact information for those who didn't watch out in controllers? So not to go through.
Yes.
I assume that's a yes.
That's it, yeah. I don't know that they even work.
Any other questions for Justin? Hearing none, I'm gonna move to the next agenda item, which is an update from the Coeur d'Alene Airport Association. I have Mr. Craviotto on here to give that update. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, and I want to say that our Coeur d'Alene Airport Association is doing very well now. We have a lot better communications with, a lot of the parties on the airport, which is really, really interesting. Some of the items that we're working on is a camera system so we can have, viewing cameras, but that's kind of a touchy subject because we have the airport has cameras and Mike has cameras, and so we're trying to work ourselves through that, so we will probably come up with something. I was thinking that, even with, the state of Idaho has a camera right on, what's the name of that airport down by McCall there. But, they have a Johnson Creek airstrip, they have a camera right on the airstrip there, and that's part of the statewide system, so you can view that at any time and it's a live feed, I think. So we'll look into that.
So Harry, I have a quick question before you go off that subject. What are you guys hoping to accomplish with those? Because what I use mine for is surface assessment. I want to know if there's ice out there.
Right.
In my hangar, and if there's a berm pushed up. And
I think it's just more for what's happening on the airport at that particular time, so it's a a live feed. They would like a live feed, I think.
Not every 30 minutes. They want to have a light.
Yeah, I mean, you do yours every 30 minutes and,
Right.
and, I understand that, and that's a very good way of doing it, and maybe, if we're just looking for conditions, maybe that's, and we'll talk about that maybe a little later. If you're comfortable with having everybody share it.
Well, you can pull the raw feed out there.
Okay,
It's just the JPEG file, and it has no labels on it except for time and date stamp and so on and so forth.
sure. Some of the other things that we're interested in are, the rules and standards. I know that the advisory board was working on that. We haven't heard anything recently on that one. The other thing is that we're trying to get some bikes on the airport for the transient pilots coming here. And so they can just pick up a bike and ride over to wherever they want to ride it to. So anybody that has any extra bikes, the airport probably should love it. The other thing that we for our members, we have some of the businesses on the airport giving us discounts on certain products that they put out, or gas and maintenance and that kind of thing. So we're looking at that, and then Elspeth is working on a newsletter contributions. We're trying to get people people that are on the airport or associated with the airport or flying around the airport to do an article so we can put that into our bulletin and share their experiences and that kind of thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was Gaston talked about it at our other meeting last night, but it was the fact that we have, he's working on a text system. Maybe you could expound on that, and that's all I had at the moment. But thank you.
Yeah, it was the phone text notification system that I was talking to you guys about the last meeting. Essentially, we'll be gathering a database of all the users' phone numbers, and we'll have a system that we can send out real-time updates on. Like if we're gonna put down a runway for plowing for an hour and a half, we can send a quick text that says 220 is closed for the next hour and a half, or look out for this gate broke, however we want to do it, but just kind of a quicker means to get out to the users rather than paper mail, something everyone has a phone, so it's in their pocket, they can get information pretty quick, so.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, with that, I'm gonna move on to item number 9, which is denoted as business, but it's really old business, and the software of the counties doesn't allow you to override and put things in like old business, new business. So it appears this way, but these items under here are really from the last meeting. We started discussion on them, but we had a few members that couldn't attend the last meeting. So we decided to just continue the discussion to tonight for those who were not able to attend. And this kind of involves formation of and nomination appointments to the airport board study subcommittees. there are two, I'll just mention them, but one's for research and report to the airport board on status and recommendations of airport complaints management system, and the other one here is a subcommittee to research and report on status and recommendations regarding airport rules and standards. You'll notice I took off the reference to the FAA regulations. There's an error last time.
Well, I'm gonna kind of put it back in the comment.
Okay, wait for a second. And the third one's just kind of like shine to it, but it's for discussion, but it's the kind of overview presentation regarding the airport master plan and other related planning documents. So again, these are just held over from the last time for folks to debate about and then get going with the appointments to these two subcommittees. So with that, I'll just start with the first subcommittee. This is to research and report to the airport board on status and recommendations of the airport complaints management system. So looking here for we can have a little discussion first, but if we just want to get into it and seek some nominations, we have a max of 3 people who can be on there, and alternates can be on.
Maximum of 3 board members.
Actually, under the revised board rules, it's gotta be 3 because we can go into it, but the BOCC has approved the guidelines for the board. We have a max of 3 that can be on a subcommittee, and that includes members who are alternates.
Okay, well, what I was getting at is, are members of the public, could they be appointed to that same subcommittee? We get some expertise from the community. That was what my point.
Okay, well, you're stopping me. So, but good point. I think that there's that opportunity in here, but I have to go back to the guidelines, so. Let me take over my answer to it for a second. Hi, Joan, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
So I think what we've done in the past is we had a subcommittee that has laid some ground rules, and then we sought input from the public, and maybe that would be
That could work.
a way to do it.
Yeah, because here with the max of 3, that's because of our, quorum rules and things like that.
Sure.
So I think Joan's past history is a good one, which is let's constitute a subcommittee. And then, in their work, they can consult with the public and gather input. I think that's a safe, fine solution.
Good idea.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So with that, if there's any other discussion, please have at it, but otherwise let's just get going with nominations, I suppose.
Well, I think since the last few months, we've had far fewer complaints, and we still probably need to have a complaint management system put in place that is transparent to everybody and agreeable to the airport management as well as to us. And if we're gonna divvy up and decide which of these we're gonna be on, I'd volunteer to be on that committee.
Okay. Ryan, I have a question.
Sure, Mike.
So it seems like there should be one of those systems in place countywide already that you can just draw from. Why are we potentially reinventing the wheel there?
And you remind me that last meeting, Bruce alluded to something like that the county uses. And also Gaston last meeting mentioned that if there is a complaint, it comes to him. I think what was said though was that maybe it may not be as formalized as perhaps it could be, and that might be a good thing. And so that, this subcommittee might look at just what you're saying. Is there an existing system that we can just use and not recreate a wheel? And is the existing system adequate?
Well, can I address Gaston directly on this? Do you have a system in place like that already? Because
Essentially, I mean, if it's a noise complaint, we have a noise complaint channel that goes to our phone tree.
Okay.
And that's something that I check. Outside of that, I mean, there's no official complaint forums on our website or anything like that. That could be something that we could explore. I know some airports or even noise complaint lines have a noise complaint form that you can fill out online that actually has like a Google map, like draw where your house is, or where did you witness this happen, and tell us about it, and it logs it that way. It's an easy way to keep a log, so. That's something that can be developed, but essentially, yeah, if it all just hits channel me, whether it's by phone call or email. Pretty much, hopefully I can stop it there and take care of it. But I think the mechanism that, the commissioners were talking about would be more, if you weren't satisfied going through the airport director, or seeking that satisfaction, what channels do you go through after, what's the process for resolution?
So to tag off that, let me ask a question that, is there a system, like a policy or system in place now where there's like a written policy, like here's our complaint management system? Is there anything like that? Okay.
One of the challenges, problems that I see is that in the lease agreement, it appears that the airport director is the final authority on any disputes between the leaseholder and the airport. And that's one that I think if there's a clear channel for the stakeholders here to get a message to the airport management without having it blow up into something beyond what it needs to be, that's the type of dispute or complaint resolution that I would like to see put in place so that we don't have to go beyond. But to make sure that the stakeholders have a voice, and that by the time it gets to the authority that's making the decision, that if they're not satisfied, there's still some way that it can be diffused. So,
One comment was like Bruce made was he was interested in having a documented history for the purpose of saying, basically tracking this so that you know that, these things ebb and flow. If you've got a consistent problem that you need to go a little deeper and address, and I think that's what he was looking at. And of course, that would encompass not only stakeholders with lease issues, it might be people in the surrounding community. Might be businesses on the airport having a problem, things like that, just something that would give, especially the VOCC and the airport director, a consistent record. And so, right now, I'm guessing, I talked about this today, they do have a hotline when people call up and are complaining about too many airplanes being gathered, noisy or whatnot. And that system has certainly always been there, and it's always gonna be there, and a lot of those are, I don't know how much formality we want to assign to those unless we want to have gas and keep track of how many calls you got on a daily basis about noise, for example. But the other kinds of things that would come up, we would need to have something structured that would be outside of the administration, would be just a process that would be inherent in the organization, so that, we wanted to know what the problems have been from time to time, we have a clear record of it. So
Did you have one? Yeah, I was just thinking that we're looking for nominations. Steve kindly would offer his.
I just don't want to get put on the other one.
Heading that out, okay. Are there any other business on the board there? Anybody else interested in naming themselves up, or? Frank, I don't mean to pick on you or anything, but I know that this was something you had mentioned about. As a
I
subject
just
matter.
pushed it as an agenda item that Bruce had that hadn't been dealt with, and I'm not really interested in serving on that, so.
Okay.
I would recommend, pick one of them, we say what, Chris?
I would like to hear for that, because I think that would fit into my expertise area, whereas the next one wouldn't.
Okay, anything else? We get one more slide.
You might include a member from staff.
Yeah, but I'm not supposed to direct staff, so if they want to.
No, but he might have to, like, to volunteer, you're not directing, you're saying, would you like to serve?
Yeah.
You like to go home and eat dinner. Right.
Well, I think in the nature of I think in the work of the subcommittee that they should interact with the airport staff to, so have a meeting with them to get solicit their input, but for this purpose, this is just constituting the subcommittee comprised of board members. So is there anybody else who would like to volunteer to be on it with one more slot? No takers. So just to get things moving along, I would I would nominate Steve Anderson to serve on the subcommittee to research and report to the airport board on status and recommendations of airport complaint and management system, and also Chris Nordstrom. I would also offer him up and nominate him. So we have anybody who would like to make I guess that would be the motion. Make a nomination. Maybe a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And we need to come up with a better name for that subcommittee.
Yeah, it's a bit word salady.
Yeah.
But any nays? Okay, the ayes have it. So our subcommittee for this purpose of the airport complaints management system, look at it, research it, report back to us. It's gonna be Steve Anderson and Chris Nordstrom, sorry. Let's move to the next one. This would be a subcommittee to research and report on status recommendations regarding the Coeur d'Alene Airport rules and standards. Mike, you had a comment in this regard earlier. I don't know if it had to do with the title or
No.
if it was something more. So
No, but I've been thinking about this since I suggested it.
yeah,
And the reason for my making the suggestion that we review the rules and standards is because we have a new airport director and he probably has some information that's valuable with respect to rules and standards. Also, in the past, we were kind of blindsided by the rules and standards, the way that it was presented. And we really felt that we didn't have any, I'm talking about airport stakeholders and users. We didn't have really much input. After a time, because we complained enough, we were able to get some input to it, but really what we touched on were only the highlights there. My concern is that, but I'm just gonna give you my personal experience. I've been aviator since 1994. And I started my training at Palomar Airport down in California. And during that training, I was never advised of any rules and standards for the airport. So I think there's a wholesale lack of knowledge as far as rules and standards go. And I brought this up before that whenever I fly into another airport, I don't go online and look up their rules and standards. I make the assumption that whatever's in place is harmonized with the FAA rules and regulations. So, you heard it said that you start to lose interest with somebody after a couple of paragraphs. Our rules and standards grew quite a bit from what they were previously. And I think when you do that, you run the risk of losing people's interest. So who's gonna come and look at the rules and standards for this airport before they fly into it? I think very few people. So I think what we should do is take a look at and this is where I interject back in the FAA into it. I think it would be prudent to look at the FAA rules and regs and try to harmonize our rules and standards with those regulations, because as an aviator, the FAR handbook is kind of the Bible of flying. And if we know what's in there and we harmonize with those rules and standard of the regulations there, everybody's probably going to be okay. I also noticed that there are a lot of the rules and standards items that aren't being enforced. So, I mean, why have them in there if you're not going to enforce them, except maybe tell me this as an attorney. If they're in there and you claim that you don't know what they are, you're still guilty of whatever was in the rules and standards, right? So it's kind of a safety measure as far as liability for the airport, I would guess. But so those are my comments as far as why I thought we should review the rules and standards. The last item would be that why do we have to have a subcommittee for this? Because I think it would be very beneficial for those members here who are not aviators to be involved in that too. And then you have a multitude of interests, specifically you being an attorney, you might be able to lend some information that I don't have since I'm not an attorney. And why do we need a subcommittee for it? I mean, we could simply go through piece by piece, and it can be a homework assignment basically, and then you come to the next meeting and say, hey, I noticed this seems, a little bit excessive for what's going on here at the airport. Doesn't match what's in the FAA rules and regulations, and then just go from there. But I think limiting it down to only 3 people, I think, I mentioned before, and it might seem elitist, but I said that you'd get a better product if you had aviators reviewing the rules and standards, because we have to abide by those rules and standards. The average Joe up the street, he doesn't care. So I think you might reconsider having it group wide instead of the subcommittee. Can you do that?
I think you could, and just to add a further wrinkle into what you're suggesting, actually they could work in conjunction, and that's how I viewed a subcommittee. Is there would be some super knowledgeable people about rules and standards in the subcommittee that would take a good hard look at them. As part of that, they would speak with the airport director, Gas, and others in the know about, what's it like in actual reality from the airport management, and get their input, right? And then come back with recommendations, and then it could become the kind of work amongst the entire group. That's what I had sort of envisioned, and then I just thought you had some magical knowledge about the rules and standards of one of the
No, the only magical knowledge I have is as a user here at the airport, I know what works and what doesn't, and what people are happy with and what they're not happy with. And so, I mean, it's like kind of an no-brainer.
The other thing about the subcommittee was it kind of focuses it among 3 of the members, and then not everybody has to be totally on game. And I know that people have lives outside the airport board, so I was thinking about that as well. But I'm willing to, entertain other options, but I do think having a subcommittee, this focused knowledge group that interacts with the airport director and stuff, and then comes to us with recommendations, and then we broaden it into the discussion like you would envision, could be pretty efficient way going about it.
Brian,
Sorry, Joe, I'm more on the side of it.
just a couple of comments. So I agree with partly what you're saying. I think it's important to have an aviator or 2 on there, but I also think there should be representation from more of an airfield management standpoint as well. I would recommend the subcommittee because when we try to do it in our regular meeting, we don't have the time for the other business that needs to be addressed. So I would recommend having the subcommittee, have them come back, and then we can maybe have what do you call it? A workshop session once the subcommittee put together what they feel it should be. And the other reason I feel this way too is because as you stated, the rules and standards were very contentious when we were going through them here, and we attempted to have a voice from everyone, but it didn't quite work out that way. So that's another reason I think it would be prudent to have some people, take a hard look.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I concur with both Mike and Joe, and I especially agree with Mike as far as go for the non-aviation folks here. If you match up anything in the rules and standards against the FAR, and it conflicts with the FARs, guess what? The FARs met.
Yeah.
They're the controlling authority here. At the time the rules and standards were originally introduced, it was a contentious fist fight over the course of several months to try and get some very onerous provisions out of it, which we managed to do. At the end of it, we had they stood muster with a well-experienced aviation attorney, set it up in Bonner's Ferry, the OPA guy. And he said, well, they're still not the best, but they won't do you any harm. I think the principal complaint that I and everybody as a stakeholder on this airport has, you've got 59 pages where, a third of the volume would serve the job very adequately. And I think if we have a subcommittee, that's what we want to do, is go through and get rid of the verbose nonsense in it and make it easy to understand and make it, easy to enforce as it is right now. I know I've got to refer back to in several instances and comparing it to other airports. And other more complex airports have much simpler rules and standards and function quite adequately with them. The FAA is happy with them. What we got saddled with, in my estimation, is a pig in a poke, and it's about time that we trim the pig. And made it easier for Gaston to do his job, for us to comply with it. And, you know, dispense with a lot of the excess verbiage that's in it. That's the biggest objection I think that most of us have. If we didn't do anything with them, I'm sure we could live with them, as we have for the last several years. But I think it would be in everybody's favor at this point to go back and take a hard look at them. Let the subcommittee go through, make recommendations, and, you know, wholesale trimming down. So you're still preserving the intent of the rules and standards. You're just really simplifying the process, which is something that should have been done in the first place.
Yeah, and that document is meant to be a fluid document, and it's meant to be reviewed periodically. So, and I don't know that it has since they were published.
No.
But may I make a comment? Sure. I follow these rules and standards very closely when he originally put them into place. And we fought several items and they were ignored by the previous airport director. And he said it was a fluid document. I took it down to the county board of commissioners for one particular item that I was not happy with. And I still did not get any resolve on it because the county commissioners did nothing. That was in the past. Now, I don't know, the item that I'm talking about was a rule that you couldn't land a helicopter within 50 feet of a structure. And I did unaudited survey of all the helicopter operators in the area. And they said this was totally ludicrous. And that they land within that building all the time within 10 or 15 feet. And it's a lot more convenient for helicopters because you got to put wheels on, get them into the hangar and so on and so forth. The other thing I'd like to mention is that when we were doing this, I tried to get a variance, and I was let's see, how shall I put this, accused of being a commercial operator, and I wasn't. I'm just a storage facility. So that was another thing that irritated me quite considerably. So and there's nowhere in the FARs that tells you how close you can land to a building. This should have never been put into the regulations, into the rules and standards. So that's my biggest complaint on that. And the other thing is, I think that we ought to have input from the community over this thing, not just have a subcommittee making the decisions on all this stuff. So there ought to be some input that we ought to be able to do to help you guys out.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I did want to make note of that last point. I think in the subcommittee's work, one of the things that I would propose is that the subcommittee reach out and interface. And I think Joan, you were going to bring this up about how you did it in another manner. I think that's a great way to garner that input, but that's not the end of it. And certainly the subcommittee with the recommendation is not the end of it either. I mean, it would have to be an approved thing by the board. When they come, we work together. And I think that's another opportunity for the public to come in the working session. We have public comment so that people can weigh in if they weren't able to weigh in at the time of the subcommittee. So you got 2 bites at the apple before it ever goes to any kind of vote on a recommendation. I think that's a good way to go about it. So with that, I think just to clarify, I think a subcommittee, from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks are okay with the subcommittee. The subcommittee would reach out and garner input from the public in that process, come back with recommendations to the airport board at large. And then we would have a working session or more, whatever it took to go through those recommendations. And in that process, we would also ensure that the public had opportunity to again weigh in as to what's going on in the discussion. And from that, we would then come to some form of consensus, hopefully, about what, if any, recommendations to make, and then take the vote on it. Frank, did you have a comment?
Well, considering the minimum rules and standards, correct me if I'm wrong, really govern operations on your. Is that correct? Are you telling us that we want to go out and have a public hearing for Lane and allow people to come in and talk about basically how we're running the airport? Because I can't connect the dots on that. I could connect the dots on going out around the airport to the users, the aviation.
I didn't so much think of the external part when the subcommittee's meeting. I thought the subcommittee would know people because of their expertise, right, that would reach out to people in the airport.
Well, when you're saying public, are you talking about people?
Well, they're part of the public, they're part of the aviation.
Well, yay and nay. I mean, the public is the public, that's the entire country, but I'm talking about.
Okay.
If we're to do this, for example, we could have a subcommittee, we could coordinate, for example, with the airport association.
Well, that's kind of what I was
Okay,
thinking.
I misunderstood.
Internal people at the airport, but I think I wouldn't,
Maybe,
if you knew people in the community that you felt like, hey, you know, we should talk to this person, and they might not be an airport community member, they might be said, but maybe.
Again, I'm talking about internal operations in this airport. I'm not talking about things that would impact the public outside the fence. Like,
Okay.
Well, a good term might be aviation community. or
Yeah.
Well, I think
something.
users and stakeholders, and I think
Right.
that's what it encompasses.
I agree.
Yeah.
Look, I think what I would say is, I would leave it to the discretion of the subcommittee as to them reaching out to the people they feel outside of the subcommittee, airport staff, airport community, to make those contacts. And if you feel someone outside the airport is someone who has input or not, it would, whoever, that's the subcommittee can figure that out, okay? And gather that input as part of your role. I think that captures what you're saying, Frank. I
well,
think
basically what I'm saying is that given we involve members of the community that they were impacted, that's the people we want to deal with. I don't have any interest in going down to Fort Wayne High School, for example, and have a public hearing. You understand what I'm saying?
I know, but I am also saying to that point, this is not a directive, I'm saying is subcommittee contact who they feel is necessary to
Okay, that's fine.
contact.
All right.
To garner input as they feel they need it, right? And then come back with recommendations. And then at that point, you know, other people, maybe there are other people in the community that will be in the board as a whole. And they can come in and give public comment as they are allowed to. In that process, right?
Okay, we beat that to death.
I think so.
Yeah.
I was just gonna mention that when you do like a subcommittee, it can be just open to the public and if there's 3 or less, depending if you have a forum, then you have to notice it, or you can notice it. And then you're not like reaching out to the school specifically, you just have noticed it, and if somebody shows up that they're interested, then I would assume you listen to them as well, whoever they are.
Well, I think the reason for 3 or less was because they didn't want to have to deal with open meeting laws.
And Jonathan can correct me on this, if you have a subcommittee and you're making a decision or recommendation,
Deliberation.
that the right to come up to the larger body.
They're not deliberating unless there's a quorum. It's not deliberation under a law. Okay, and deliberation is what triggers the open meeting law requirement. The idea is that a less than a quorum, 3, right, can work and do subcommittee work and come back with recommendations to the broader board where we have a quorum and then the public hears from that. So
We've always just treated it if we've had a meeting where you're making the decision that's gonna come up, that's the decision we've noted. I get the deliberation part. Maybe we don't have to.
I would add one more thing to this. This is not going to be a short-term process.
oh, not by the next
There's
meeting.
59, no, not by the new year. I don't think it's 59 pages long. There's a lot of fat in there. There's a lot of, John worked on the original document. I worked on it. Harry's very familiar with it. Mike's very familiar.
Hey, just get a good highlighter pen and let's go through it chapter by chapter.
That's what-
and just boom.
That's exactly what's going to have to be
And we
done.
should have the FA for right,
You should have all of that in.
I know, John, you expressed interest.
right.
Mike, obviously, and then I keep assuming, but I shouldn't, that Frank, you may have interest in being on this as well.
I would be interested to be on this.
Okay, is there anybody else who'd be interested in being on it?
I would, but I'm not on the board.
I think you'll be invited.
We'll talk to you. We'll talk to you.
I can't. Mike, moving us along, I think it's a good discussion, but I'm gonna move along to the nominations.
So I'm gonna nominate Joan, Frank, and Mike.
Second. So, so we have second, and, all in favor, say aye.
Seconded, were you recognizing a second?
I think Brett did.
Motion.
We can both,
Second.
go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You can fight over this.
So with that, I would, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing no nays, the motion passes, and we have, Joan Genter, Frank O'Connell, Mike Koski will be the subcommittee to, research and report on status and recommendations regarding Portland Airport Leadership Standard. Now, moving to the last item in what is old business. We began discussion last time, schedule overview presentations and presenters on the airport master plan and other related planning documents. That kind of in the participation that we had last time, the folks that weighed in were not thrilled about that idea of an overview presentation. It was, as Frank aptly pointed out, go read the document. Okay. But I did want to extend the opportunity, as did everybody else who's present, to those who weren't here, to also weigh in with their thoughts about, you know, whether or not to schedule over presentations and presenter on the airport master plan and other related community planning or related planning documents. So this is an opportunity for folks to, if they missed the conversation, to join the conversation.
Well, I appreciate that. I've been through a couple presentations on it. I don't think it would do me any, to sit back through it, nor would I. So I think it's more related to people that have not been exposed to it. They might have
I've
questions.
got something to add to that as well. It's, as we move into the master plan update next year, that will be a key portion of that. We'll be reviewing the old document with more changes. So it's a very long process, but the advisory plan.
Yeah, I would agree. That makes a lot more sense.
It's a huge document, 269 pages long. It is out on the web, perhaps. Yes, it could consent. We've got people here that have not seen it. We can get them written copies of it, so you have an opportunity to review. It's pretty.
It was like pulling teeth to get a printed copy, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty easy read. It's pretty detailed and comprehensive, and I'm guessing, and I thought a lot of what is there is gonna carry over into the next document anyway, so. At this point in the game, it is a little premature, a little early, we are gonna have other issues to be dealing with. But for those that need to read and review it, I went out and pulled it up with the phone several weeks ago and did just exactly that. Refresh my memory, it wasn't terribly difficult.
Your phone could handle.
I find it,
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of handy to go if I've got a question. In other words, it's a good reference document.
Yeah,
And I know it's gonna change as time goes on. So you can go into it and you wanna know about potential land use over here or new taxiways maybe, or those type of things. What's in the master plan, you can pull that stuff out of it. And
I'd recommend at the same time, go out there and pull up a copy of the rules and standards and take a look at those. And for those of you not familiar with them, you can better understand what our concerns are and what we're gonna be trying to go forward to do.
So,
So I have a question of Gaston, could I?
sure.
Will we be, last time we went through this process, we had a consultant that guided us through it. Is that gonna be happening this time as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
We will begin that selection process.
thanks.
So, Gaston, one other question was, the FIA had made some suggestions about updating the master plan, I gather. And, can you encapsulate like what the categories were that they were making a recommendation, like you might want to update your plan according to the following?
Essentially, just development that has taken place since our last master plan and ALP that has been made, pretty much just updated. Some things have been developed differently than it shows on the ALP. The airport might have different ideas of where we might, how we might steer future development. that will change on that as well. So, it's pretty much just a lot has taken place since the last document was made. So we have a lot of updates to do to that and different ideas we might want to steer the ship towards essentially. So.
Well, to close this out, my take based on the comments received from the board members is, look, it's premature to get into this. Let's let the airport staff do what they're doing to come up with the updates. They will continue to keep us apprised of what's going on. And at the right time, this will come to our attention and we will take up the discussion then. And
So that can be officially tabled.
yeah, I think it doesn't have to fail as an action and it's slated as an action for now. I think the consensus is no. Does anybody feel differently? I guess I'll say all in favor of tabling this for an indefinite period and Bill comes back, say aye.
Aye.
I hear no nays. Were there any nays? All right, I think that passes. We won't do anything for now. So the last, next is item 10 on the agenda, which is public comment. So I invite anyone who's interested in making a comment, you come on up and chair. Okay. I don't see any takers, so we'll go to the last item, which everyone will be happy about, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved to adjourn.
Second, anybody against adjourning? I think the ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thanks all.
Really?